Hi, I am Angela Kotzer, nurse practitioner since 2006, and I am certified in functional medicine. So I have a deep passion for helping people uncover the root causes of their health challenges. My journey into functional medicine began more because of my own personal health issues, but also because I quickly realized when I got into medicine that I wasn't really helping them just by treating their symptoms when they came in. I was just band-aiding things. So really during one of my most difficult periods of life, I was a busy mom of three. I was working long hours in a super highly stressful environment, seeing like 40 patients a day. I was training for marathons. I did Ironman or half Ironman races. And all of a sudden, my body just couldn't handle it. I ended up with terrible joint pains and fevers that would come on weekly. Despite multiple doctors, no one could really pinpoint what was wrong. I was offered symptom relief, but just not answers. And so that's when I actually discovered functional medicine. And it changed absolutely everything. So instead of masking symptoms, I began digging deeper, looking for the why behind my inflammation, my fatigue, my stress-related symptoms. And through that process, I healed and found a new purpose in healing and helping other people do the same thing. So today, I am incredibly excited about the power of genetics in functional medicine. When we understand our genetic blueprint, we can make targeted, personalized lifestyle and nutrition choices that support long-term health. In this class, I'll be showing you how your daily choices, what you eat, how you manage stress, how you move, can either support or work against your genes. So my goal is to empower you to make choices that help you feel better, prevent future illness, and truly thrive.
Hello, my name's Lisa Markley, and I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm also the director of culinary medicine at the AdventHealth Whole Health Institute. And today I'm excited to introduce you to our culinary genomics program along with Angela here. So we're super thrilled to be bringing this back for you. This is a program that we launched a few years ago. And since then, over 100 participants have joined us to explore how nutrition and lifestyle can be personalized based on your own unique genetic blueprint. It's an innovative approach. It blends cutting-edge science with everyday wellness. As a dietitian for the past 20 years and as a culinary instructor for the past 16 years, I'm very passionate about prevention and wellness. And I see my role with this program as an opportunity to really bridge the science of nutrigenomics, which we're going to tell you all about in this orientation, along with the art of cooking, really truly helping people nourish their bodies in ways that are not only effective, but also enjoyable and practical. And so my approach has always been to teach cooking classes and provide nutrition education that really meets people where they're at. I like to emphasize fresh, flavorful whole foods, always with a focus on making healthy eating accessible and sustainable. With this program, what I think is really interesting is that we're able to take it a step further by tailoring our culinary, nutrition, and lifestyle recommendations to each individual's own genetic profile. We really aim to support truly personalized wellness. Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking some time to learn more about our culinary genomics program. We're really glad that you're here, and we welcome any questions you may have after viewing our orientation today. My name's Lisa Markley. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I am the director of culinary medicine for AdventHealth Whole Health Institute. And joining me today is Angela Kotzer, our certified functional medicine nurse practitioner. And today we're delighted to share with you information about our exciting upcoming culinary genomics program.
Yes, welcome. We're very excited about this. So first of all, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what the Whole Health Institute is and why we do what we do. But the Whole Health Institute, we are a group of people that really try to dig a little bit deeper, focusing in on the whole person. So functional medicine, first of all, in case you don't know what that is really just treating the root issue of a problem rather than focusing in on the symptoms. And so if you think about what's happening in the world today, people are living a lot longer lives. And unfortunately, they're suffering from a lot more chronic illness and disease. And so, those longer years, unfortunately, they're great, except they end up being fewer quality years. And the current approach to medicine is to treat chronic illness more in the terms of acute remedies. So we're not really getting to the root problems. We're just throwing medicines at symptoms. So in general, people are not actually getting better. They're just getting Band-Aids on their symptoms until another one shows up or they end up with a side effect. So rather than doing that, like I said, our whole goal is to really dig deeper and treat that whole person. Because when we take into account the whole person, we're getting much better results. And so that's really what this whole program is about, is we want to look at the uniqueness of you, from not only the genetic perspective, but what's going on with your life, with your goals and everything, and helping figure out a plan that works with your genes to help optimize your health by getting to those root issues. So when we think about our health, it's really determined by our choices and our genes. It's not one of the others. And you're going to hear Lisa and I talk about this all the time. Your genes are not your destiny. They're certainly fixed, but just because you have a gene for something doesn't mean it's actually going to affect you. So when we think about choices, our choices are going to include things like the food that we eat, where we live, how much we sleep and exercise. And they do give, like our genes themselves do give us valuable insights into your health, but we still need to consider that whole picture. Like what are we bathing our genes in is kind of what I like to think about it. Every single person is very unique. And so someone with one set of genes that lives this lifestyle may be completely showing different symptoms or signs as somebody else. So we have to take all of that into account. I kind of like to think about it like this whole like blueprint, right? Our goal is not only to teach you what your genetic blueprint is, but also how can you optimize those choices or choices in your life to make impacts on your genes, turning them off or turning them on. And that's what we call genetic expression. Genetics themselves, or how it works, I mean, we have to kind of think about where we even get our genes. Well, in general, we inherit equal amounts from our parents. So one from mom and one from dad. I kind of like to think about it like a cookbook. So you're getting half your recipes from mom, the other half from dad. And then those recipes tell our body how to grow, what color hair we have, from whether we're a night owl or early riser. And it's the uniqueness of those traits that is making you different from, say, your siblings, right? But that variation is actually very, very small. There's only about 0.1% difference in our DNA that's making us different. I threw this example in here, just thinking about red hair, for example. There's a difference between dominant and recessive genes, which we don't have to get really into the weeds with this at all. But for example, if you get one copy from dad that is for not red hair, and then you get one copy from mom that is red hair, you're not going to have red hair, because the red hair gene is what we call a non-dominant, or what we call a recessive gene. So it's only going to show up if you get two copies of it. So for example, in this homozygote recessive, if you got red hair from mom, red hair from dad, you're going to get red hair. So this is kind of how traits work in general. Not every change in our DNA is going to change how things present in our body. So what we're interested in our reports is the differences that do alter our enzymes or hormones, and we want to understand how changes can affect the way we respond to our environment. So for another way to say that, we can't change the cookbook, but how we cook the recipes can change based on our choices and our environment. So, we inherit this cookbook, and we're stuck with it. But this is where epigenetics comes in, and it's very, very powerful. It's like adding or removing ingredients from a recipe, depending on what's happening in your life. So we can totally change how it tastes, right? When we think about epigenetics, this is all the different environmental influences that are going on that can affect us. So everything from our diet to our mindset, toxins we're exposed to, illnesses, if we're exercising or not exercising, sleeping or not sleeping, how is our gut health? And so epigenetics, again, they don't change our DNA. They can just kind of change how our genes are showing up for us. Maybe turning, I kind of like to think about it like a light switch, turning things on and off. Healthy choices can turn on beneficial genes and turn off harmful ones. In this example here, I think of a garden. If you picture, obviously this garden is very well tended with lush plants. I hope mine looks like that soon, but with all this rain, we'll never know. But I want you to imagine a garden that's neglected and overgrown with weeds. So your genes are the seeds, but your lifestyle choices like nutrition and exercise are the water, the sunlight, influencing whether those seeds grow healthy or poorly. Another way to look at it, I'm just throwing all sorts of examples out because I feel like epigenetics can be kind of complicated. But if you imagine your DNA as this big library of books, which is our genes, while the library's content or your genetic code is going to remain the same, epigenetics determines which books are open and read, which we call active genes, and which are closed and shelved, which we call silenced genes. So again, what we eat can affect which genes are active and which genes are silenced. Really cool example of this is this experiment or study that was done, and research conducted the study on what's called the agouti mice. And these mice have a particular gene that when it's active, it causes them to be yellow and obese and prone to diabetes and cancer. So that mouse on the left. But so what they did is they fed the pregnant mice different diets. So one set were fed foods that were really rich in folate, B12, and choline, and their offspring were brown. So a normal mouse color instead of yellow. They were lean instead of obese, and they were healthy without increased risk of obesity and diabetes or cancer. So the diet had silenced the gene. So the mice, obviously, that didn't get that ended up being yellow and obese and diabetic. So what does this mean for us, right? We got to think about the same thing. Our diet can be turning on or turning off our genes. So we want to focus in on exactly that, looking at what are your genes saying and how can we affect them with your nutrition. So DNA, what is it? Well, DNA is basically like the cookbook in every single cell, right? It's the instruction manual for your body. It's this long twisted ladder, and it contains the code for everything your body needs to build, repair, and function. So if we think about it, like I said, like a giant cookbook, it's in every single cell. Every gene is the individual recipes, telling your body how to make a specific part, like a hormone or an enzyme or your eye color. The amino acids are the ingredients, proteins, which are basically a bunch of amino acids built up together, make the final dish. And then enzymes, hormones, and neurotransmitters are the meals that your body serves up. So what those are making, the proteins are making these enzymes, hormones, and neurotransmitters to keep everything running really smoothly. So this is kind of how our body does everything. The proteins that we're talking about are what code for every part of your body. So very, very important. But we can have what's called a typo or a SNP in the recipe. And sometimes this typo can cause an effect where it's actually changing meaning. So in here, see, it's just one single letter that is spelling changed or, not correct, but it's completely changing the meaning. This is what we call, some of them are going to have a powerful change and lead to a disease, and we would call that like a high penetrance gene. But there's other typos or SNPs that are insignificant. So it has no effect, or what we call low penetrance. You probably heard of some high penetrance genes, like the BRCA gene is probably one of the most common out there. And so when we think about, high penetrance is going to refer to the likelihood that a person with this genetic mutation or with this change is going to actually show signs of symptoms. So if the gene is high penetrance, that means the gene is almost always going to cause the condition. So for example, in the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, there's up to 70% risk of breast and ovarian cancer. But there's a lot of other people that get cancer that don't have this gene, right? So there's other groups of genes that can together cause a problem like breast cancer or whatever. So like I said, in low penetrance genes, they don't necessarily have much effect at all. The gene increases the risk, but other factors like your lifestyle and environment are going to play a bigger role in whether your condition happens. So I kind of think about it like a light switch versus a dimmer switch. High penetrance gene, light switch. You flip it on, the light's either turning on or turning off, right? But in a low penetrance situation, when it's like a dimmer switch, so when you might turn it on, but how bright it is or whether it comes on or not really depends on other things. These low penetrance genes are the ones that we really are going to focus in on the most, specifically with this type of a test, because these are the ones that our environment and the choices we make have the most significant effect on our health. So those individual variations play a lesser role. One of the ways 3x4, or this genetic test that we're talking about, is different than other genetic tests is that it's grouping genes into pathways. So groups of genes that we can focus on which pathways are the most affected in you and where we should put our focus of like, how do we implement change to best help you? Like, what's our biggest problem? Is it inflammation, or you don't detox well, or you have a lot of what we call oxidative stress? And so then we can create a program around that to really impact your overall future health. So 3x4 is taking a series of these low penetrance genes, groups them together so they form a stronger, more precise picture of an individual's susceptibility to something. So this is kind of the beauty of functional medicine. While we can't change the genes or the SNPs that we've inherited, we can support those weak spots through targeted lifestyle strategies. We can support it with extra sleep, or maybe you need to do intermittent fasting because of something we found in your genetics, or maybe you need a certain nutrient called sulforaphane that's going to be really supportive of you. But like I said, that's really the beauty of functional medicine is we can target that and look where your body, you really need that support, and then we can create a plan together that's realistic for you. Lisa?
Yes, and yeah, thank you, Angela. Before we dive into a little bit more about the actual nuts and bolts of this program, I just wanted to touch on nutrigenomics, since Angela had pointed out that there are so many epigenetic factors in our environment, our lifestyle, our sleep, our exposure to different toxins. Most of all, nutrition is such a foundational piece of this that we have control over because we often eat 3 to 4 times a day, right? Including snacks. So I wanted to touch on the importance of nutrigenomics because these are places where we can incorporate bioactive compounds from foods that really help support our genetic expression in a more positive way. So nutrigenomics is defined as the relationship between nutrients, diet, and gene expression. And so the nutrients are those epigenetic factors that are playing that role on how those genes are expressed. And it's the combination of our genes plus our diet together that may affect a person's health and risk of developing diseases. So it's not one or the other. Nutrigenomics is a field that works to identify bioactive compounds that can influence or modulate which specific genes can activate certain types of genetic behaviors or responses. Next slide, please. And furthermore, we've developed this field called culinary genomics as the next stepping stone from nutrigenomics, because it's one thing to know about how nutrients and bioactive compounds can impact your genes. It's another to actually know how to incorporate those foods into your diet in a way that's going to support your health. So culinary genomics is defined as the combination of nutrigenomics plus food and nutrition science plus culinary arts. And I wanted to pay homage to one of our mentors in the nutrition realm. Her name's Amanda Archibald. She's a registered dietitian who coined this term years ago, and she authored the book Genomic Kitchen. And just wanted to think for a second about how much we've learned just in the last 2 decades or so since the human genome was mapped, but that we're still uncovering so many new things in this area of science. And so one of those things is looking at how these bioactive compounds can play a positive or negative role on your genes. So I wanted to define what bioactive compounds are. They're non-nutrient dietary compounds that are concentrated in specific foods, and they possess the ability to make changes in our health status when eaten. And on the next slide, we're going to talk about what some of these bioactive compounds are, and I'm sure that some of them may be familiar to you. But like Angela was saying, some of them function like a switch, and they set in motion a series of biochemical steps, resulting in the activation and sometimes deactivation of certain genes. So we want to know how to incorporate these compounds into our diet to have the most beneficial health outcomes. Many of you have probably heard of the bioactive compound curcumin. It's found in turmeric, which is a spice that's in curry powder and other foods. And we know that its genetic impact is that it's anti-inflammatory, and it activates a gene transcription factor called the NRF2. And so we want to find ways to incorporate this particular bioactive compound into our diet. And my job in this culinary genomics program is to teach you how to incorporate some of these bioactive compounds into some of the recipes and the meals that you might already be eating, how to level up your meals to have more of these bioactive compounds in them. Lycopene is another one that you may have heard of. It's found in tomatoes. We know that it's more concentrated when tomatoes are cooked, and it becomes more absorbable to the body when it's cooked versus raw. And one of the ways that it benefits us is that it talks to that NRF2 transcription factor. It's anti-cancer, it's anti-inflammatory, so it does a lot of things to support the health of our cells. And then the last compound, I mean, I could be talking about thousands of compounds today, but I'm just going to touch on 3 just to give you a couple of examples. But one of the most important compounds that's been discovered is sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is found in our cruciferous vegetable family, and this family includes things like broccoli and cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, radishes, arugula, kale, collard greens, turnips, and more. And the way this supports the body in terms of genetic impact is it actually helps our body produce its own internal antioxidants. Of course, these cruciferous vegetables are going to be a food source of antioxidants, but above and beyond that, they actually help our body produce our own internal antioxidants to have a much stronger impact. I'm going to talk a little bit more about sulforaphane on this slide here by giving you an example of what happens, what we know happens. This is where some of that food science comes into play. We know that there are compounds in our cruciferous vegetables like broccoli called glucosinolates. Well, glucosinolates don't become active in the body until we activate an enzyme called myrosinase, and that converts a glucosinolate into sulforaphane. And again, like Angela said, we could get into the weeds with some of this scientific jargon. We're just trying to give you a few tangible examples to know kind of that things are happening beneath the surface that we're not even thinking about. But when we do things like chop up our broccoli, that helps to activate the myrosinase enzyme. And we don't want to overcook the broccoli. We want to either eat it raw and chew it really well to activate that enzyme, or lightly steam it to kind of preserve some of that benefit. So those are some of the things that we dig into a little deeper when we do the Culinary Genomics program and teach you during the cooking demos, which I'll explain more about coming up. Why do we love sulforaphane so much? There are so many benefits. As I mentioned before, it activates that NRF2, which is the body's strongest defense against oxidative stress. We are all dealing with oxidative stress. It's kind of a normal process of aging. And what happens is if we don't have enough, if we're not producing enough of our own antioxidants to protect our cells and our DNA from damage, from the oxidative stress, then that's when disease process can set in. So we want to be making sure we're activating as much NRF2 as we can. Sulforaphane also helps by supporting our body in detoxifying harmful substances, and that's mainly done through the liver. And so it helps our liver convert toxins into something that is less toxic so we can excrete it. It also, like I said earlier, it activates our own internal antioxidants. It can slow the aging process. It can deactivate carcinogens and help our body eliminate them from our system. And then down at the cellular level in our nucleus of our cells, we can prevent DNA damage by, again, lowering that oxidative stress. And then ultimately overall lowering inflammation. So there's a lot of things that it can do when it speaks to our genes. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor as to a little background on epigenetics, nutrigenomics, and how that can be beneficial for the body. Now we want to dive into some of the nuts and bolts around the Culinary Genomics program that we want to share with you today. And Angela's going to tell you a little bit more about the test, but I'm going to outline the components real quick. So the program itself includes the 3x4 nutrigenomic test. We've partnered with a company called 3x4 Genetics. And like Angela was saying before, we love this company because it's more looking at pathways. It's looking at actionable things that you can do with the genetic blueprint that comes out in this report that they share with you versus just having these random genes that you might have learned one-off from some of these other testing companies. So the way we do that is we collect a cheek swab. It's a saliva test, very non-invasive. We do ask that this test is completed 6 weeks prior to the start of our program. The program also includes 2 one-on-one clinic visits with Angela, 6 monthly group educational lessons and cooking sessions with both me and Angela, twice monthly virtual check-ins where we kind of alternate and help support troubleshooting any questions or issues that come up throughout the program. You'll also get a one-on-one nutrition visit with our registered dietitian in our clinic. And then we provide you with an educational binder with all of the resources and more than 50 recipes that really focus on ingredients and foods that speak to your genes.
Thanks, Lisa. So I think probably one of the biggest questions is like everybody wants to know, okay, what's tested? So there's so many things that are tested that it's almost overwhelming, honestly. There's so much information, which is why we have created this program to break it into chunks, because to just do the test and sit down with you for an hour, we're really not going to get you all of the cool and key things that you can start implementing into your life to make changes. So anyways, 3x4, it's built on a systems biology approach, which means that we're starting upstream, meaning, again, we're starting with the biggest things that are going to impact everything else in our body. So we're looking at that root, right? The root cause. We're not looking at the bottom result or the symptoms approach. So we're looking at those bigger critical cellular pathways and then kind of going down from there. So in terms of cellular health, that means methylation, oxidative stress, detoxification, and inflammation. So those are what we call our big pathways. So we always start with that. And that's actually happens to be our first section that we go through when we're teaching you. Other pathways. So like I said, there's 36 pathways, there's 146 genes. So there's a lot of data, but mood and behavior, memory and brain health, histamine tolerance, hormone balance, glucose and insulin, which happens to be a very important one. I feel like this is becoming more and more of a problem in the patients I'm seeing these days. Bone health. So are you prone to osteoporosis? What do you need to do about it? Collagen and joints. And when it comes to cardiovascular health, we're looking at blood clotting, cholesterol, your actual vascular health, so the endothelial tissue, blood pressure, energy. So this is my personal favorite category, honestly, this and activity, is it's looking at, I guess I just have a passion for weight loss and weight gain and exercise and what diet do we need and what type of exercise should we be doing? How much recovery do we need? And that's all in this. If only I were to have known this like years and years ago when I was doing like my Ironmans and my marathons and even in my cross country days back in college, I probably would have done way better. So anyways, we're looking at appetite, your pro-inflammatory fat, adipogenesis, energy expenditure, exercise response, weight gain, weight loss resistance. When it comes to activity, are you better at endurance? Are you better at power? How long does it take for you to recover? How long does it take for you to improve your VO2 max, which happens to be a huge new, what we'd call vital sign that we're starting to see a ton of research done in the literature in terms of aging and longevity. So very cool. And then nutrients, caffeine. Are you a slow metabolizer or a fast metabolizer? Iron, fatty acids, choline, super important for your brain health, folate, gluten, vitamin D, salt, vitamin C, B12. So many really fun things. And one of the really great parts about 3x4 is that they don't just give us the data, but they're giving us the data in a way that's easy for you to understand. So they're using all these great pictures and descriptions of things in your report. So yes, we're going to go through it and we're going to explain it more in depth, but it's certainly already a lot of it's going to be written out for you in language that's going to be easy to understand and then apply into your life and into the changes that you're making. So this is another example of what the report will look like. So it's going to give us, for example, mood and behavior. This person is very high. So dark purple means it's very high impact. It's really affecting them, or it could have the potential, may not be because their lifestyle, but could have the potential to be really an issue. And then over here on the right side, you'll see this list of all these random letters and numbers. This is the actual genes being tested. And so we'll delve into a lot of some of these more specific genes as we go through each category and talk about how they're affecting and what we can do about them. Lisa?
Yeah, so, on that previous slide, I know it looked like alphabet soup, and learning about your genes can be like learning another language. And really just wanted to say that you're not going to have to become an expert on what each gene does. Angela's been training with 3x4 to learn about all of these pathways and how they can be interpreted. And so don't stress when you see that alphabet soup. You don't have to learn the language. We're here to kind of help fine tune, see what would apply to you specifically. And one way we do that as part of the program is that we do provide 2 one-on-one clinical visits with Angela, where she takes more of a functional medicine approach to your health. And during these visits, she's going to take a deeper dive into your health goals and look at your medical history, look at your medication intake, any supplements you might be on, and really help you to target and fine tune your regimen based on your genetic pathway. So we can help you meet your unique needs. We also offer these, so that's, so the first component is get the cheek swab, do the test. The second component is meet with Angela, go over your test results, look at it in the context of the bigger picture, your clinical picture, your medical history. The third component are these in-person educational classes that we offer. We'll do 6 of these, so once a month for 6 months. We'll meet. The dates are going to vary based on when we start the program, and we will provide these to you ahead of time so you can see if they work with your schedule. But we have been running this program off and on with various cohorts over the years, and so we will get back to you with the actual dates. The time typically is from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So it's usually on the third Friday of the month over a 6-month period. We meet once a month at the Johnson County Community College Wiley Hospitality and Culinary Academy in their beautiful culinary theater, where you get to come in. I think we have a picture of that on the next slide, Angela. You get to come in and enjoy a beautiful lunch. Sorry, we'll come up to that picture in just a moment. Yeah. But when you arrive, it's like a lunch and learn. I prepare a lunch for you that features ingredients and foods that speak to your genes, and each module that we cover will cover specific foods that fit within that module. One other thing that we're going to do, another level of support we provide, is that we offer twice monthly virtual check-ins between classes. For those of you who are needing a little more support and want to get on a call, we'll be reviewing some of these different pathways in these calls a little bit deeper, and then I'll be available to answer any recipe questions, any culinary techniques or nutrition questions on these calls as well. So when we meet each month for 6 months, we've broken the program down based on the report we showed you into 6 key monthly module topics. So in the first module, we're going to cover cellular health. What's going on down at the cellular level in terms of how your body is doing with inflammation, detoxification, oxidation, and methylation. So those, we have specific genes that will come out on the report to show you if you're somebody who needs a little more support in any of these areas. And the other thing we'll talk about at the time that we're covering cellular health is histamine, because again, that's another set of genes that we will see on your report and see if that's something that impacts you. The second module we'll cover is all about metabolic health. That's where we'll dig deeper into weight, activity level, glucose, and insulin, and how your genes play a role in that. The third module we'll cover is hormone health, and we will also during this time cover any of those genes that might make you predisposed to certain nutrient deficiencies like vitamin D, B12, or that might make you more predisposed to having issues with gluten. And then the fourth module we'll cover is cardiovascular or heart health, and we'll look at the genes that play a role in controlling your cholesterol levels, controlling your ability to vasodilate your blood vessels, so that can play a role in, blood pressure, hypertension, things like that. Our fifth module will cover brain health, where we'll look at the genes that impact memory, mood, and behavior. And our sixth module is the final module, and you want to click that next one? Yeah, and that one's going to cover bone and joint health. So that's going to look at the genes that may predispose you to developing osteoporosis or may impact your body's ability to produce collagen. And so we'll want to look at how we can support your overall bone and joint health in that last module. So here's that picture I was talking about earlier. This is the Culinary Theater at Johnson County Community College. It's a beautiful space. We have a nice demonstration kitchen, and everybody gets this educational booklet with all the recipes and the slide decks that Angela prepares with the educational piece. So when you arrive to class, we feed you lunch, and while you're enjoying the lunch, I demonstrate what you're eating and talk about how the specific ingredients on that menu for that particular module supports your health. So if we're covering bone health, for example, in that sixth module, I'm going to be really focusing on minerals in that module and talking about foods that are very rich in certain minerals that impact bone health. I'll also be talking about vitamin K and how you get that, and magnesium. And so I'll be demonstrating in a practical way how to get more of these key nutrients into your diet so that we can support your genes in that way. All of my cooking demonstrations include these recipe tastings. And my goal really is for you to be able to take these recipes home and want to actually prepare them at home. So I try not to overcomplicate things. However, I do want to nudge you outside of your comfort zone a little bit to be willing to try new things. I've had people in my classes say, oh, I never knew I liked beets until now. Or I hate kale, but now, the way you prepared it actually tastes really good. Don't worry, I'm always willing to make any substitutions or accommodations as needed. I'm not going to make you try anything that you don't want to, but I'm excited in my classes to share menus that are built primarily from colorful plant-based whole foods. We do use some animal proteins as well, but we really do show you how to make plant foods more of a foundation of your diet. And we'll talk specifically about how those plant foods and the bioactive compounds in those foods support your genetics. And the goal is that you come away with practical tips and strategies and meal ideas to make it easier to eat, make healthy eating easier for your genes. Next slide, please. So these are just some real pictures that we've made of real recipes we've made in our classes. Just to give you an example, I might do a healthy twist on pasta bolognese where we're using a leaner beef or ground turkey or even lentils in the bolognese sauce, which is typically a meat sauce, adding more nutrients by adding some fresh herbs and spices. So to wrap up, we love this Culinary Genomics program because, we know that a lot of people are becoming more interested in using food as medicine. And we really do feel like this program helps support people in understanding not only the why, but also the how behind how to use food as medicine, how to delve into some of those environmental factors, those lifestyle factors to help tweak some of those things to support your health. And we know that food is information for your genes. We know that food brings us together. It's socially going to connect us, and that's going to be really important for our health as well. So that's another factor that we love around this program. And and of course, food also is important for fueling us, but we want to understand how to do that in a balanced and practical way. So with that, the next steps would be, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to Megan Parsons. She's our director at the Whole Health Institute. She can give you more of the details on how to get enrolled for the program, what the actual program dates are, how to take payment and things like that. The second step would be go ahead and register and pay for the program. We do take HSA and FSA cards if you want to use your insurance card for that. If you have HSA or FSA funding, you're welcome to do that. The program itself is $1,299 for individuals. If you sign up with a friend, a family member, a loved one, you get $100 off. And then the third step would be to schedule your coming in to get your cheek swab done. You'll need to schedule that during a time that you can fast for 1 hour before you get swabbed. So no food or drink for 1 hour before we take that cheek swab. The fourth step would be to schedule your pre-program one-on-one clinic visit with Angela to kind of get going. Usually people like to wait until they actually get their test results back because it's a lot to digest. But you can schedule it at any time. And then the fifth step would be go ahead and mark your calendars with the monthly module class dates, twice monthly virtual meetups that we're going to do for support. So thank you for your time and attention today. Please don't hesitate to reach out if we can answer any of your questions at all. We're excited at the prospect of having you join our Culinary Genomics program.
Yes, thank you.